This is our agenda for tonight's session on influencing your elected officials. Talk about why we want to contact our elected officials, who to contact, what to say, and then I'll share some resources and next steps along the way. So starting off with why we contact our elected officials. I'm going to say from my personal experience, and the reason that I do this work is that I just know I can't sit on the sidelines. And one thing I tell people often in my training sessions, I have found that the antidote for anxiety is action. That there's a lot going on, and when I am actively taking steps and doing work to try to improve things, I feel better about what's going on. I feel a little bit more of a sense of control. So I thank you all for being here tonight and being ready to take this action with us. Of course, in our democratic system of government, all power comes from the people. So, one of the organizations that I have borrowed some content from and who is doing good work is Indivisible. These are quotes from Indivisible. Trump wants us to believe that the presidency is all powerful, and it ain't true. Our power comes from our ability, us, our ability to be a source of support or a pain in the ass to our elected officials. Oop, there we go. Speaking for myself, feels like everything everywhere all at once is going on right now. And one way I'm thinking about where I want to take action is based on this diagram here. And it might be just a little bit small on the screen, but as a reminder, I will be emailing out these slides tomorrow or the next day. What it's saying here is that there's a whole bunch of stuff that could hypothetically happen. There's some stuff they're maybe talking about doing, a smaller universe of things they're trying. And then at its core is the stuff they have figured out how to pull off. And one suggestion for thinking about how to allocate your time and energy so that this work is sustainable for you and so that you have focus is to concentrate on the stuff they've figured out how to pull off. This hopefully will help us be a little bit grounded so that we're not overtaken by panic, shock, and awe. Another principle that I think about comes from Miriam Kaba, who is an organizer, activist, archivist, curator. Miriam Kaba said very recently, we don't all need to be fighting the same battles. There are too many fronts for that. Engage in the fights that are most meaningful to you and leave the others to other people. The work is infinite. I know my personal capacity is not infinite, and we're going to be in this fight for a while. This is not going to be resolved in a week or a month or a year. So it's important to think about how you can be engaged and also make it sustainable for you. So I know that I have a weekend ritual for breakfast with my husband that renews my soul and helps me feel good about doing this work going forward. So just think about not everyone everywhere needs to be doing all of the things in response. And that's one of the reasons that this material tonight references a couple of organizations who I think are doing particularly good work. Whatever you're doing, here are three questions to ask yourself. And this again comes from Indivisible. Is what you're doing strengthening the likelihood of strong Democrats getting elected in the future, weakening the future for Republican opponents, and building our base of the people, the volunteers, the elected officials, the leaders who are going to stay active and continue to be active through next year's midterms, through the 2028 presidential, and on an ongoing basis. Couple keys here, and you will see these are themes that come up a couple of times. We are supporting and we are pressuring. Okay, I'm going to take a real quick look at the chat and see if there's something that I should bring up for the whole group. Yes, I will include this recording when I send out the email. I see some shout outs for some of those quotes there. So, oh, Jim Harris. Oh, and I think Daniel answered your question. So hopefully that was helpful. Um, okay, well, let's move on. We are applying pressure and supporting people whose values are aligned with us. So let's talk about who we're going to be contacting. And I want to make sure we're taking a broad lens here. The news about Trump, about what's happening at the federal level, gets a lot of the attention. It is what sometimes makes me most anxious, but it's not the only source where we should be applying pressure. So I want us to broaden this a little bit here and think about local, state, federal. All of these levels of government are places where we can be supporting or pressuring our elected officials. We have seen it. I know I see it on social media all the time. There's not someone coming to save us. This is a democracy. It's for us to save us. I liked the way Indivisible put this here that in this moment, leadership has to come from regular people, not just politicians. Elected Democrats, people who are aligned with our values, they need our encouragement, they need our support. Sometimes they need us to cajole them a little bit. And elected Republicans are going to have two choices here. They can break with MAGA, which they should, or we're going to hold them accountable for the harm that they're causing. What motivates our elected officials? Comes down to a couple key things here. They are motivated by getting reelected and growing their own power. Bottom line, there are elected officials who are in it to do good work and to help people. And there are elected officials who are in it because they're jerks. By and large, the motivating factors are about getting reelected. They know they can't get reelected. They can't get into higher office without maintaining and growing their base of support. This gives us the opportunity to apply pressure. A note here on this page, and this is going to come up a couple of times. It's important to focus on your elected officials. Going into a little bit more detail here, what your electeds care about and what they don't. I apologize that this is a little small-ish, but I'm going to talk about a couple of these that I think are most important. Electeds care a lot about their constituents, the people they actually represent. They don't really care about the opinions of people in places they don't represent. If they're all about getting reelected and getting elected to the next level of office, they want to know that you are their constituent, which is why Indivisible, other organizations, why I don't recommend that you call elected officials who aren't your representative. Electeds care a lot about advocacy that requires effort. So if you can pull together a handful of people to attend a town hall, that shows that there's effort and therefore it represents the opinions of a lot of people. They don't really care about form letters so much. They don't care what mean thing I'm posting on Twitter or Facebook or Blue Sky or whatever. Every once in a while, some of those conversations bubble up, but for the most part, they don't really care about that. They care about the endorsement of interest groups that have known political power. So having power as an interest group means you got a lot of money or you have a lot of people. I don't know about you. I don't run a $200 million PAC. I'm looking to get a lot of people involved in moving in the same direction. On the other side, elected officials don't care that much about your thoughtful analysis of their proposed bill. I think this might be a little bit of a difficult truth sometimes, but that's not really what they're looking for. They don't really care about single constituents, but when we can show numbers, they pay attention. They care about concrete asks that ask them to take a specific action, vote for a bill, make a public statement, things like that. They don't really care about our general ideas about the world. They care a lot about timely asks in your communication to them. They don't really care that much about a laundry list of all the issues you're concerned about. So, in a little bit, I'll talk about how to turn some of this into action for us. So, keep some of these principles in mind as we go along. Getting real specific, who do we have here in North Carolina? I know there are some people in this meeting that aren't in North Carolina, so you'll have to do this on your own. But for North Carolina, our two senators are Thom Tillis and Ted Budd. They are both Republicans, and Thom Tillis is up for re-election in 2026. Ted Budd isn't up until 2028. What this means is between now and 2026, we can apply a lot of pressure to Thom Tillis. If you've got one phone call to make a day, I'm calling Thom Tillis rather than Ted Budd. He's going to be in a precarious position and he's worried about getting reelected. So we've got an opportunity there. I have their phone numbers on the screen and you can also see the Senate federal switchboard number. So if you are not a North Carolinian, you can call that number and ask to be connected to your state senator. Again, for those of us in North Carolina, there is a resource here that Daniel just dropped in the chat where you can find your legislators. This is for the U.S. House, for the North Carolina House, and the North Carolina Senate. So on the left-hand screen is the form you'll find if you click on that link, and I will also email it out tomorrow. When I put in my address, it pulled up my representatives here, my U.S. House representative, my congressperson, and then my two members of the North Carolina General Assembly. There is the House federal switchboard number there if you're not in North Carolina. And what I'm able to do then, I can click on Brad Knott, I can click on Aaron Paré, Lisa Grafstein, and go to the website for their official position and find their contact information. In North Carolina, our executive branch is referred to as the Council of State, and Daniel's going to drop the link here. So our Governor Josh Stein, our Lieutenant Governor Rachel Hunt are Democrats. On the Council of State, on the left-hand side, you can see the list of who our other Council of State members are. And when you go to that link from Daniel, if you click on somebody's name or photo, it will take you to their official website where you can get their contact information. When we get further down, it gets a little trickier, and I don't have a single source to give to you, but I just Googled Wake County elected officials as an example, and you can see here it gives me a web page on the Wake County government website listing elected officials. And for local office, I Googled Holly Springs elected officials. And again, the Holly Springs official website has a list of who is serving. By the way, I'm making note of the Republicans, the Democrats. I'm making note at the local level of people who maybe are running in nonpartisan races. I'm going to call all those people. When I have their contact information, when you gather their contact information, I highly recommend put it straight in your phone. This is a screenshot from my phone, from my address book. Take note of all the information you can get, phone numbers. So for our US representatives and senators, they probably have official office numbers in DC and then also in their district or local offices. They might have a physical address and a mailing address, email addresses, social media. Follow your elected officials on social media and see what they're talking about and what they're posting. I'm not going to get into a flame war with them on social media, but I want to know what they're saying. So save that right in your phone so that you have that handy. Okay, let's talk about what to say. And Daniel, if you would drop this link in the chat too. I don't know, random activist made this, and I kind of liked it. And they recommended handing it out. It was built so that you could print and fold it and hand it out when you go to events. We're not going to yell, but we're going to yell at the government. Okay, so what I want to say here, I'm going to focus quite a bit on making phone calls, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But again, the work is infinite. It's everything, everywhere, all at once. No one way works. It will take all of us shoving at the thing from all sides to bring it down. That wasn't necessarily in relation to this. This poet is passed away a few years ago, but I still found that to be a really helpful way for me to think about this work. So I am going to talk about a couple of different contact methods. And the source that I used for a lot of this is a website called Five Calls, fivecalls.org. And we'll share that link in a little bit. And it's a great group that all volunteer based. I know the people who set it up. They've been doing it for 5 or 6 years and really provide a great service. So here are some of the contact methods to consider. You can attend in-person meetings or town halls. This can be high impact, particularly if you and a group of like-minded people show significant numbers and you can get a meeting with your elected official. You're probably not going to get a meeting with Tom Tillis unless you've got like a lot of people, but it might only take 5 of you to meet with your mayor. Maybe it only takes two. So think about the level of office you're targeting. So it can be hard to get, but it has the potential to be high impact. You could mail a letter. Letters do take time to arrive. Then someone has to read it. They have to sort it to decide, are you pro an issue, con an issue, which issue is it? Same basic thing with email. It's faster than mail, of course, but it still has to be read and manually sorted so somebody knows kind of what you're saying and what your position is. This is why I'm going to focus a bit on making phone calls. Phone calls are fast. They are tallied immediately by the representative's office. So it gives our elected officials a sense of the numbers very quickly. So I want to share one resource here. And I'm sorry, Daniel, because I'm bouncing around a little bit. I put a slide in the wrong spot. Um, if you're interested in organizing a congressional visit, you want to get some like-minded people together to meet with your congressperson, for example. I want to share this resource here from the Physicians for a National Health Program. They have a congressional visit guide. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on scheduling face-to-face visits, but this toolkit is a good resource. And this is something to think about as a group project, right? This isn't one person getting a meeting with Tom Tillis or your representative, but if you can get critical mass of people to join you. You could also use this toolkit to probably schedule visits with your town council, mayor, maybe even state assembly, and you don't need as many people probably to get a meeting with those elected officials. So that resource, I will also include that in the email tomorrow. I did just see a question happen to pop up about postcards. Postcards is going to be the same as mailing a letter. It takes a long time to get there, has to be read and sorted, so it probably is quicker to read. But I still like phone calls for the immediacy. So, what should you say when you make this phone call? And here's the secret, it doesn't really matter. This is a numbers game. And I'm telling you this because I want to relieve some of the pressure. You don't need to develop like a pithy response to whatever's in the news. You don't need to have the perfect metaphor or personal story that might be heart-wrenching to explain why you have a certain position. It is numbers. So, members of Congress will get a report from their staff that says HB 227 had 50 phone calls yesterday, 40 were in support, 10 were against, something like that. So, you don't need to take a lot of time preparing for this call. Here are some tips for calling. You can keep it short. It can be less than a minute. When you're calling the office, a staff member is going to answer. That person is not who you're mad at, so be respectful. This is where we're not actually going to yell at this person who answers the phone. If someone answers live, they're probably going to ask where you live. So let them know where you live so that they can verify you're a constituent. If you call after hours, which if you're nervous about making these calls or if you don't like really talking on the phone, you can call after hours. You're probably going to get voicemail. If you leave a voicemail, leave your address so that they know that you live in the district. What's important on this call is that you make your stance clear. If you're calling about a particular bill and you have the bill number, fantastic. Just make it very clear what you're asking them to do. Issue a statement denouncing X. Issue a statement in support of Y. Vote no on this pending legislation. Vote yes on this legislation. One of the reasons I love Five Calls is that they provide scripts. Now, you might have issues you are heated about, or maybe issues that are really local to us in North Carolina that might not be on their list, but their website is quite robust. So when you put in your address, you can click on the issue that is most pressing to you at that moment, and it will give you a sample script along with your senators and congressperson's contact information. This sample script that I picked for no particular reason, I'm calling to express my outrage over Elon Musk's unlawful and undemocratic takeover of the federal government. And I ask that Senator Thom Tillis, boom, here we go. We got 5 options here. Pick one, two, three. Um, and this is giving you a sample script that you can use to express yourself. So it started out by saying specifically, I'm a constituent from Holly Springs. And then for the issues that they have sample scripts, you can use this, you can deviate from it. What's important is to make sure they know you're a constituent, to be clear on what your ask is, and honestly, to keep it short and sweet. Going back to this is a numbers game. Also, generally, the advice is to only call about one issue at a time. I'm mad about a whole bunch of things. But you probably want to call about one thing at a time so that they can score it, so that your elected official gets that number of how many people are pro or con a particular issue. For a while there, I had my senators in my phone, and I had a calendar notice every day at 8:45. I got a little tingle that said call and yell about something. So every day I would call and call about a different issue, the same issue, call over and over. I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier about support and pressure. So if you support the stance of your elected official, you can call and thank them. I really encourage this, especially for our Democratic members. Call and let them know, particularly if they had to take a tough stance, say thank you. I know that was a tough vote. I want to say thank you for doing that. Um, and if you oppose their stance or if they haven't yet said publicly what their stance is, call them, let them know what you, their constituent, thinks of that position. Okay. I'm going to share some resources and next steps. But let me see, there's a lot going on in the chat. Let me see if there are a couple of questions in here I could answer, focused on what's meaningful to you. Oh, one thing about Five Calls that I like is I don't know how they do it because it's all volunteer run, but it is updated all the time. So they are keeping an eye on what's being voted on in Congress. So this is for senators and our Congress members, not for our General Assembly or people who help run in the North Carolina government. But at the federal level, Five Calls is updated really regularly. So great resource there. Oh, on town halls. Yeah, so I mentioned that it can be difficult to get that in-person meeting. It can also be difficult to attend a town hall because Republicans have kind of learned that we're going to show up and yell at them. So I will say some electeds are doing telephone town halls. Um, your elected representatives probably have an email list you can sign up for so you can get updates from them. They are not all doing town halls. There's nothing that forces them to except us saying it's not acceptable that you're not doing it. This is one way that Indivisible is kind of built their reputation is on agitating to pressure elected officials who aren't holding town halls and organizing events at their offices. If you won't hold a town hall, we'll show up at your office. Do they care about constituents whose party is not theirs? So, they have to, particularly, I'm going to say in North Carolina, like we are really like the definition of a purple state. So, for example, our Council of State, our the governor, lieutenant governor, those 10 positions I talked about earlier, it's pretty 50-50, or maybe we have the Democrats are six and they are four. Anyhow, North Carolina is absolutely a swing state, an evenly divided state. You're definitely not winning statewide office if you are purely focused on your Republican voters. Now, if you are in a highly gerrymandered district, then maybe you decide, I don't want to spend my time and energy agitating and calling this Republican congressperson who won with 70% of the vote. Maybe there's a different person who you want to spend your time pressuring. Maybe you focus on Thom Tillis, maybe your town council. So think strategically a little bit about where you think you can have the most impact. Boo hiss boo. I see that in the chat, so thank you. Oh, good tip from Heather here. Ted Budd's DC mailbox is always full, so call the Asheville office. That's one of the reasons I was saying when you get somebody's information, put it all in your phone. I would start with the DC office, but yes, if that mailbox is full, I'm going down through the list. Let's see. Thank you, Daniel, for continuing to share those links. Sorry that I switched up my slide order. Yeah, if they don't hold a town hall, we can apply pressure, or you could make a strategic decision to say, I'm going to spend my energy somewhere else. And that's where, you know your community and your electeds better than I do. But think about where you can apply pressure. Dun, dun, dun. Yep. So I'm almost caught up to the chat, except people are posting more questions. Let me give this just like 2 more minutes. Petitions are letters with hundreds of signatures. I don't think that matters as much. And what I would say is part of it is just the speed with which the world operates now. With social media, news is instantaneous. So sending letters takes time in a way that making phone calls doesn't. My reps at datamade.us. Oh, thank you for that. I'm going to make a note and check it out and see if I need to change my slide. Thank you to Chase, my reps dot datamade.us. Okay. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of people saying 5 calls. Yes. Yes, Diana was beat poet. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on and I'll come back to the chat here once I get through this next section of slides. Talking about resources and next steps. Daniel, if you could drop some of these links here. I've mentioned Indivisible a lot. I do have a lot of respect for Indivisible. They are an organization that came out of the 2016 election and does a lot of work applying pressure to electeds, Democrats and Republicans, depending on what the issue is. They have a guidebook for navigating the times that we are in, and I took some of this content from that. It's lengthy. It's, I don't know, a dozen or 20 pages, but I think there's a lot of really good information there. I just skimmed the surface, so I recommend that resource. We've talked about 5 calls. Glad to see that some people in the chat were bringing them up. It is a fantastic resource. So when you go to their website, and they do also have an app, put in your address, click that red go button, and indicate what issue is most pressing for you. You can see, for example, in this screenshot, they said they want people to call back on an issue that previously they had people calling for because a bill passed the House. So the script had been updated and everything. So if it's an issue with the federal government, this website is really fantastic. Okay, I am going to stop recording